All right. It is 7 o'clock, and Gideon, you haven't heard from Tom?
No, Joyce Kelly. I have not heard from him.
Oh, there's Joyce.
So
Okay.
he sometimes joins a little late.
Yeah, and since we're not voting, I think it'd be okay to start, no?
I'll let him on if he comes.
That would be kind of you, Gideon. Very kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Gideon. Hi, Elise.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi,
All
Bob.
right.
Oh, hi.
So
I see a bunch of people. Hi.
if we're ready, we're going to start the meeting. 7:01. I usually read this ahead of time, so I'm going to do it again because you love to hear me speak. This is the December 10th, 2020 Historical Commission meeting. And the Historical Commission of the city known as the Town of Watertown is holding a public meeting in accordance with the governor's orders, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, relating to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency, and to avoid group congregation. This meeting will only have remote opportunities for participation with public access as provided. Okay, so one item that wasn't on our agenda, Gideon, I just want to touch bases. We don't have minutes.
Oh,
No, we don't have a clerk right now.
oh,
We don't have
Yeah.
what?
We did not have a clerk right now, so that they're accumulating until
Okay.
someone can do minutes.
Okay. All right. The first item on the discussion is the Schick House, Watertown. We received 2 letters, one from the Watertown Historical Society and one from a neighbor. And I just want to state before we start discussing fabulous Schick House that this is not a demolition hearing. So there's been no application or anything. We're literally just discussing the letters that we received. And the house is in relation to the letters. So if I feel that you are starting to venture towards discussion that is not appropriate because there is no demolition application before us, I'll gently remind you that we're only talking about the letters, okay? All right, so did everybody get a chance to read the letters?
yes.
Well, Marilyn, it's like the kid who raises his hand. You want to start?
Oh, well, one was from the Historical Society,
Yeah.
and I'm the president of the Historical Society, so I know about it. And I don't want to have any conflict between these 2 hats that I'm wearing to
There's no
jeopardize.
conflict. Again, there's no conflict
Because we're not
talking
voting.
just the letters.
Okay. Well, we're in favor of keeping it, and we provided a good deal of information as to the importance of the place, its history, and the people who live in it.
So the good news is, Marilyn, no one's asked to get rid of it. So
Not if
do
it.
you
no,
know
not-
anything more about the history of the house than was provided in the letter from the Historical Society?
Well, at some point, the latest newsletter was sent, I think, in one of the attachments, where the lead article by Bob Bloomberg of the Historical Society gave an extensive history of the house. It was, it started out as sort of a country place with prize horses, and then it was a market garden, and its real interest was when the immigrant Schick family bought it and developed the Watertown Dairy there. At which point the house, which was surrounded by farm, was not in its grandest state, I suppose, but it still had a lot of its elements on it, more than now. And Mrs. Schick, in her memoir, referred to it as an aristocrat in overalls, because it was a practical farm going on around it. And the Historical Society owns a milk bottle from there, as well as her memoir. And the dairy eventually outgrew Watertown, moved to Weston under the same name. But the Schicks they bootstrapped from nothing into quite a business there. They were the first Jewish family in Watertown, and there's a whole lot of tie-ins with ethnic history and agricultural history and the architecture of the place because of the Italianate style. And some of us got to see the inside of it maybe 9, 10 years ago. Mount Auburn invited a group of who were they public historians or planners from Tufts or Harvard graduate students to come up with plans of things to do with it. And there was all sorts of talk then, and we got to take pictures of the inside. But nothing really happened until very recently when it's going to be sold.
I see Bob is here with us. Hi, Bob.
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are you?
He's
Good.
the expert on it.
I was going to say, Marilyn, a lovely intro. Would you mind if I hand it over to Bob so he can tell us?
Please do.
Okay. Bob,
Well,
welcome.
Thank you. The Schicks lived there for about 75 years, from the turn of the 20th century to about the 1980s. And then some of the children lived there until about 2002. The house, while they lived there, was a dairy farm. They had about 60 head of cattle there and about 200 head in Weston. I've been in contact extensively with Larry Schick, the grandson of the
Sorry, it's
Two
Wayland,
people.
not Weston.
Wayland, sorry. Thank you, Joyce. Larry has given me an awful lot of information about the house and his reminiscences of the house. It was used by the Schick family, by the people who worked on the farm, by relatives, children, grandchildren, uncles, aunts. It was truly a home, and it was a place that, if you read the memoir by Mary Schick and you talk to Larry, and through him I talked with two of his brothers-in-law, the Garbers, it was a place that they had very, very fond memories of, and that meant an awful lot to them and to the community. They were one of the very earliest Jewish families in Watertown. They and a couple of other families ultimately ended up founding the temple in Belmont. The architecture is unique. It's high style Italianate. It's a block style. A lot of the exterior looks exactly like it did when they owned it. The interior, as I understand it, is decaying, which is unfortunate, but there's a lot of the original woodwork, the crown molding, the balustrades, the banisters. It is treasure. And there is all sorts of good reasons why it needs to be preserved, because of the heritage of the town, the architecture, the meaning of the house and the family to Jewish history. I could go on for about another half an hour, but I'm sure other people would like to talk. So I would be happy to take questions if people have them.
Bob, was it always blue?
I'm not sure. I doubt it, given the number of years it was
That's
around.
what I'm thinking.
Well, that's the siding on it.
Oh, is that siding and not? Oh, okay. I
Vinyl.
didn't know close enough.
So Gideon, I sent you, I think you have this, in September 2010, we put together, I developed with the commission's help, a proposal for an academic study project for the Schick House. And so there is, I don't know how many pages, kind of talking about the Schick House and its environs. And out of that, a group of MIT planning students developed a presentation to the committee at the, and they were given an award at the award ceremony.
I just wanted to clarify that it was Tufts. It was the
Oh,
Tufts
right.
project.
Was it Tufts, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless there was another study that I'm not aware of, because I was involved with the.
I know you were involved in
one.
it. I was just thinking that the person that I had talked to taught at MIT, and that's why I was thinking it was MIT. But either way, they did a little study on the possibility of reuse and an analysis of the house, which was very nice. So that has been done as background.
Does anyone know what BB&N plans to do with the property? Not just the Schick house, but the property in general?
I believe that the property, its intended use is going to be playing fields.
At the last town council meeting, the school made a presentation that showed the whole thing as playing fields wall to wall.
And no
There's
Schick
information,
house in the plan.
What?
there's information at the council agenda. If you want to click on the agenda from that meeting, there's a link to the presentation that BB&N provided to the town council.
And I know you're all highly intelligent, and we love this property, but I just want to warn us again, this isn't a demolition hearing.
Mhm.
So discussing whether or not it should be demolished is not what we're doing. We're discussing the Schick house and its history, okay? I know that's hard. But, so Gideon, you were saying on the
Yes.
PDFs, there's which one? The town crier? Nope,
No.
that's from the historical
That's-
society.
That's
Yeah.
Bob's article.
That was submitted to the, that was submitted to you. What I was saying was that the BB&N had submitted and provided a presentation to the town council. So that's public record and is there. So for anyone who wants to see what they presented to the council, it's on that agenda, and it's a live link from that agenda.
Oh, it's a link. Gotcha. Okay, yes, I saw that previously. All right. So does everybody know what he's talking about?
Mhm.
So if you go to the agenda for this week,
It was the council present, Marilyn, what date was that? It was not,
It was
It was-
Monday, wasn't it? Hold
it
on.
was in November, right?
okay, so the November agenda for the town council, and on that particular agenda, there would be a live link to the plans from BBNM, right?
Yeah, their presentation
Okay.
to the council.
Gideon, any way, well, can you pull it up?
It was November 24th.
Thank you. Oh, gosh, that long ago.
I know.
Well, no, I don't want to, that gets into future use, and I think that's, I was just letting you know that there was a document for the council.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time finding it on the website right at this moment.
Okay. Well, anybody who needs the link can ask Gideon for it after the meeting.
So I have a question, which is that if it's of some concern that the Schick house be preserved, what is the best way to talk about this and to have some discussion, and with whom?
When BB&N identified a schedule for what they would be doing, and they certainly talked about the Schick house as part of the process. And so it will be coming to the historical commission, and I think it'll be coming next month.
Okay, but
So
is it
do
okay
you
to
as-
talk about the plans that have been presented to the town council? And
the
just because I have seen them, and there is not a Schick house on the plan.
Not on the plan, no.
So you as a commission, when they are on the agenda, then you would be talking as a commission to the, potential property owner and discussing the project in the Schick house.
Okay,
So Susan, if I could step in, I would love to hear more about the history from anyone on here that knows something else about the history. I know we did receive a letter from Mr. Lewandowski. Hi, Joe. He's on there with us, who's also very interested in the home and its history. And I know, Joe, your particular letter also talked about its future use, but we're not going to talk about that tonight, but your interest in the Schick House, maybe you have some history that you want to share with us?
Well, I think that can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think one thing that Bob didn't mention was that, this house is a relic of Watertown's, the period when Watertown was agrarian. Okay. And I think that that's sort of important. That's something that we have very little preserved from that period. And I think that most people don't even know, most people who live in Watertown don't even know how extensively agrarian Watertown was. I read that at the turn of the 20th century, there were more than 100 working farms here, and I myself live on the former Kimball Farm. The Kimball Farm was here in Watertown, hence Kimball Road. Okay. So this is I think that it's an artifact of a past that few Watertowners know about. And I think, aside from the architectural value, and there might be some serious, the restoration might be a heavy lift. But aside from architectural value and historical value of one of the first prosperous and, as someone said, bootstrapping Jewish families in the East End, I think that it is an artifact of, the Watertown's agrarian past, of the farming past that existed here before, the streetcar suburb period, the industrial period with Hood Rubber, Western Electric, those sorts of concerns. We were a farming community. And I don't think that many people understand that. And I'd hope that if we can preserve the Schick House, that we might do it in a way so as to highlight some of that history.
Thank you. Do you or Bob know, has anything, aside from the piece we have from Mary, is it Mary Schick? Has it been included in any books?
It's a book called The Burden and the Proof. And
Burden
that's
and
Burden
Trophy.
The Burden and the
yeah.
Trophy. That's Mary Schick's book.
Right. So other than Mary Schick's book, is it included anywhere else as far as, I don't know, a cataloging of farms or first families or Jewish history, anything?
They
No?
are mentioned, yes, they're mentioned in a couple of other memoirs that are in the Watertown Historical Society, the Watertown Library, Watertown Room. And offhand, I can't remember exactly which ones, but they're talked about in terms of their influence on and their participation in the early Jewish history, the forming of a minyan. And there are a couple of other mentions of them in other memoirs about how well liked they were and how kind they were, how good they were to their workers. Of course, you take that with just a tiny grain of salt, because naturally people are going to want to look very good when they write these things. But I believe that from what I could read about them, from talking to Larry, I think they really had their workers' best interests at heart. And I think that they really wanted to succeed as Jewish immigrant farmers, and proving that they could do something out of the ordinary, because there are very, very few Jewish farmers. And that's another reason why it's important to keep this in mind. Jewish farmers were very rare, except for one or two planned communities, one in New Jersey and one in the Midwest, there were only very few isolated farms around the country that were Jewish. There is a current Jewish farming council, which I'm in contact with. And I'll find out a little bit more about them and about what the Schicks may have had in relationship to them. But the thing I want to emphasize, and I know this is not a demolition hearing, and I'm not talking about demolition, I'm talking about the preservation of an historic artifact that cannot be reproduced. They are the first Jewish farmers in Watertown. It is about the only Italianate house still left. It's certainly the only Italianate house left in that area of the city, of the town rather, I'm sorry. So it is critical that be kept in mind, that once gone, it cannot be replaced.
Thanks, Bob.
Can I also mention that Bob looked at census records and their farm hands often lived with them. So, yep, so they did take care of them. And in Bob's correspondence with Larry, he sent several pictures, and school groups used to go to the farm and, you know, they would show them around the dairy farm.
And where does Larry live now?
I'm not exactly sure. I haven't pushed him on that. I think he's in Florida,
Okay.
but I'm not positive. However, there are two Schicks still living in Watertown. And I am not in contact. They're the great grandchildren, I believe, and I haven't been in contact with them.
And some of the school groups that came in from Boston, not just Watertown kids, but city kids came in.
Back when it was a working farm.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an interesting dialogue. This is Gideon. I saw an interesting dialogue about the more recent memories of the Schick farm, and it was a junkyard, and a lot of people have really fond memories of finding very unique parts there for their cars. And the children were going to school, so you know it's the you're from Watertown type of online dialogue about this more recent memories of what it was for the last maybe 50 years of its life. I don't know how long it was a junkyard, but it seemed like some people had some very fond memories of finding very special parts and also retiring their cars there.
I did. And I wasn't even living in Watertown then. I was living in Brookline, and this is where I went to get my car fixed and get parts.
I'll just add one more quick thing that's really irrelevant, except that it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of interested in this. My grandparents and Larry's grandparents both started off in the West End, a street apart from each other. And it's very likely that Larry's grandparents delivered milk to my grandparents. That kind of makes it personal a little bit.
I would say so.
Yes, Bob's article that he wrote, that is one of the attachments, was also published in the Jewish Advocate. Charlie Brightrose posted it on Watertown News, and the Facebook page that Gideon's talking about also got posted on You're from Watertown If. And so lots of people commented online and told stories about what they remember.
Oh, I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Elodia, hi. Elodia, I'm one of those chair people that calls people out.
Okay, no problem. I'm here. I'm sorry, I was muted. Took me a
No, that's
moment.
okay. Do you have anything to contribute to the discussion?
Well, I will tell you that Daryl, granddaughter, contacted me asking about the Schick house and how they could save it. Her grandfather is still alive in Wayland, and they'd like to figure out what they could do. I really can't speak to that. I think she had the idea that there was a pot of money here that they could use to renovate the whole thing and everything. There is some money here, but the question is how and where. If I can just speak as a resident, I've been thinking about where could the Schick house be moved to. I did attend the town council meeting where BB&N presented. You've all probably seen my letter to on Charlie Bright Rose's Watertown News, I addressed more the issue of the entire deal and how it was done pretty much behind closed doors. But I've spoken with Marilyn a little bit. We have very little land in this town. When I talked with Daryl, I explained to her how that property is going for upwards of $40 million. And so, you know, any property that it's a fairly large house that it could be moved to, a tear down lot in this town of 5,000 square feet is going for around 600. So brainstorming, we have where the meth house was, that's too long and narrow. It's a boxcar lot. The only three places, there's a potential of the North Branch Library, but then you're putting a competitive edge from one historical property against another. And again, it would be quite tiny and involve a tear down and no parking, etc. But I do have a dream, if you want to hear my dream. Okay, my dream is move it across from Russo's. There's a beautiful big flat lot there with a gorgeous tree, and move it over there. It's private property right now. Have farm to table dinners in the beautiful months, create a wonderful public park, and have a wonderful setting for the Schick house that it would have plenty of room to breathe. Now, I don't know how, I grew up in a house built in 1771. I have never had the opportunity to be in it. I've seen photos, they were stunning. So the real question is, what does it take to move it? Can it be moved down a street? You know, you crack plaster and everything else if it's not done properly. And then what does it take to restore it? BB&N essentially said anybody who wants it can have it. That's it. They plan on tearing it down. That's what I see, or getting rid of it. Perfectly frank. They're just putting artificial turf in their parking lot and a field house, and that's their deal. And the only other possibility would be Walker Pond, but then access would be tight to move a house that size into Walker Pond. Egress to get it in there would be something, but would be obviously a pretty beautiful setting overlooking the pond, and you know, having it, what we would use it for would be a whole other issue. But the price point would be the big deal. But those are my dreams when I think about possibilities in Watertown.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you didn't want to call on me, Elise.
I know I did. I was right with you with that dream. That sounded lovely.
Well,
Love
you
Can I
know,
speak also? Can I speak to that?
Who's
Hi,
speaking?
this is Rena.
Oh yeah, sure, Rena.
Hi, yeah, there are other small, well, I know of one in my neighborhood, which is a Victorian neighborhood, which would be a nice setting for that house, I think, even though it's pre-Victorian, I guess. There is a lot in this neighborhood that is owned by someone who was going to develop it and couldn't. And I just wonder if that's a possibility. I think it's about 7 acres, but I'm not really sure. It might even be 2 lots, but I'm not sure. But if there were just that home there, if someone were to receive it on that property, there would be a place for it that it could fit into, and it would fit into the neighborhood, and it would fit into the space. Certainly it would be a big enough lot for it. But I just don't know how anybody would accomplish any of that. I'm just throwing it out there that there is another spot in addition to what Elodia said.
Can I speak to the moving point about moving the house? As a matter of fact, about 10 years ago, before we bought our current house, I looked into moving the Schick house and what would be involved in moving it and renovating it. And unfortunately, moving it, I hate to throw water on people's ideas, but moving it is really not an option. For one thing, you couldn't move it across Mount Auburn Street because of the MBTA tertiary wires. That was pretty much a non-starter. In general, moving a house that size is really not a practicality. I actually talked to house moving companies. It would have to be moved somewhere on the existing lot. That is really the only feasible, practical way that anyone could move it and preserve it. It's not, I mean, maybe someone can prove me wrong, but it's not really going to go anywhere to move it off that lot.
So, and I hear what you're saying about Mount Auburn Street, but what about down and over to Arsenal?
Anywhere where there's a major power lines is a barrier to moving. So there's a defined area, not necessarily that lot would be, Matthew, I would suggest that you could probably look at an area, but as you move it further away, I've seen some pretty substantial houses moved, but they're, blocks. And
It would be very limited, and realistically, I think that's not an avenue which would be a likely positive outcome. I
Well-
wonder, as if there's any way to discuss with the school if there's a possibility that they might break off a small portion of their property there and sell that along with the house. That's the only thing I can really think of that might work. And perhaps if it was essentially a giveaway situation, it would be financially feasible to preserve it. But even you'd have to have some kind of preservation language in anything like that. But it's a tough one. And I would say that the sooner we enter discussions with BB&N to see what they're thinking, the better the chance of a positive outcome, because I think we know where this is going otherwise.
I can tell you that their plan would be to be on the next agenda, just so we'll be able to discuss it as a commit. You can discuss it as a commission as part of that process.
I
So
can
Matt,
tell you,
I don't, thanks for dashing my dreams, Matt, but I do remember Belmont having a historic home moved from Common Street all the way down to, I believe it was right next to the skating rink on Concord Ave. Granted, that's not a huge distance, but
It's the logistics matter, and in this situation, the logistics are tough, very tough.
what were you
I
gonna
can-
say?
May I?
Yeah, sure, Bob or Joe.
So I would agree that my preference would be to not to move it, for a variety of reasons, including expense, potential damage to the structure, that sort of thing. People talking about their ideas for location. If the house had to move, if there was no way to reach any kind of agreement with BB&N, there is an open space, and this is going to be controversial, and I'm glad that no one can throw anything at me. There's an open space.
I can mute you.
You can't hear me?
No, I can mute you.
Don't.
Yeah.
But Joe, the good news is I'm the chairperson, not Gideon, so please.
Right.
Yay,
continue.
please.
Well, I'm glad that they don't have a rotten tomato button on Zoom yet. But so there's an open space on the Grove Street end of Filipello Park. And looking at it, and I would have to look at it some more, but it might provide a good setting for the house. It might be large enough, and then you'd be talking about moving the house 150 yards.
There's a significant dog park there now. I'm not sure if you've been there recently.
That's behind the open space.
Yeah.
Dog park is.
No.
No,
I haven't gone as far to look at dimensions or, things like that. But, and I think that there would probably be a lot of people who might not cotton to that idea. But in terms of keeping the house in its context, like I think playing fields are not that far from pasture, keeping the house in the context of open space and also not moving it very far, it might be something to look at,
Just so you know, it's not this hearing, but Filipello Park that part of it was acquired through certain funds for specifically open space. So it might be very impossible to use a open space, a true open space that's owned by the town that was acquired under those federal funds to put a structure on. like of that size for a use.
So, so the glass is half empty for Gideon, but half full for others. And so maybe looking into that makes some, just to explore it. This is all information, right? We're trying to gather information and come up with ideas, and Bob has his finger up.
I want to say, I've talked with Dr. Price from BB&N, and I believe her when she tells me quite unequivocally, there is no way that house can stay on that property, period. I asked her specifically, could it be moved to someplace else on the property? No. Could you redesign the thing so that you can do what you want and keep the house? No.
No.
Period. It is not going to stay on that property if this is what she's telling me.
I just wanted, before we go down this path, I'm starting to feel that we're getting into an area that's more discussing the actual house and demolition,
I
or
don't think anyone's talking about demolition. They're talking about preservation.
Gideon, may I raise a question, Elise? I'm sorry, I don't have my hand up that you can see me. I try to put it on the little hootsie. But Gideon, as I understood a while back, BB&N owns another piece of property there. They own the AMVETS property. And wasn't there some talk a while back that they would tear that down and move the house over there? Goes back way in the bowels of some memory of mine.
yeah, I guess I'm just starting to feel uncomfortable, like we're speculating about what one entity is saying and what they've said to someone. So I would rather have this discussion with BB&N as part of a meeting with them for the commission.
You said that they already brought the plans to the town, so. I think
Yeah, it's been publicly done at the town meeting.
Right, she said she'd give the house. Anybody can have the house.
Yeah.
You're right.
Correct.
She said that. Yeah.
Correct.
But
That house is not staying there.
yes, there is another property along Grove Street that at least they are using. I'm not, ownership wise, I assume it's theirs, but
It's theirs. It's on the tax rolls. They own it.
And what you asked me if so I was I never confirmed that it's theirs, but I know it's used by them.
To just
yeah.
complete my thought, the reason I brought that up that way was because I wanted to emphasize that we need to look at all of the options available to us and not discard any of them at this point. There are some great ideas out there, and I think we should keep them all open and think about them as we go along. That was why I said that.
I appreciate that, Bob. And I was teasing Gideon about the glass half empty, but I do think looking into the realities of how possible sites were acquired and whether or not there are restrictions, it's important to find out the facts.
I spent a lot of time on the dog park and redesign of the front of that Grove Street entrance to Filipello. And so I know that there's a cap there and there's significant issues with moving soil. So everything that was installed there is raised above the natural area where the original incinerator was. And the incinerator property was acquired through land, a land acquisition from the federal government funds in the early 80s or mid 80s. So there's a lot of significant issues with modifying Filipello Park.
Hey, David Russo, how are you?
Well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. What do you think about the Schick House? Isn't it beautiful?
So what I know about it is that it was built sometime about 1851. We have a map from 1850 and it's not on it. And we have another map from 1852 and it has appeared. So it's about 1851 or so. So it would be an early Italianate. The first family who lived there was the French family, it was Abner French. And they lived there till about 1875 or so when Joshua Stone purchased it. And then I think he owned it until the Schicks owned it. So it's really only been about 3 families and the current owner. So it's considering how lengthy the house has been there. It's really only been owned by a couple of people and institutions. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Anybody else have any information to contribute to the discussion about the Schick House?
I don't have any information, but I am curious, just, I noticed in Mr. Lewandowski's email, he talked about the CPA and the role that that has, if any, in this. I mean, those funds are not available in this type of situation, are they? Or is that something that can be explored?
Yeah, they should be able to be explored. They're
Yeah.
for open space, they're for historical preservation, historical preservation. And I think that they could be used. And I also think if the town doesn't want it on town property, which I'm getting that feeling from Gideon that they wouldn't want it on Philippello, even if they could take it. I could be
Sorry, I'm
misinterpreting.
completely, that's totally not true. But Rena, that's not true at all. I'm telling you about substantial barriers to using defined open space that
Okay.
also has substantial contamination issues for
Oh,
any.
oh, it has contamination issues. That I did not know any of that.
There's a cap on it. It was a landfill.
Oh, okay. Okay, but what my point was that if we need to move it somewhere near there, that you know, we should do some research into the other piece of property that they are using to find out if it's theirs or someone else's. And can we use the community preservation money to purchase the land to put it on somehow? Maybe Elodia could answer that. I don't know.
Well,
You can't use public money for a private development, correct?
It's not public. Yeah, right. I don't think you can do that. But there's also, and this is the other thing I wanted to say, the option of a public-private partnership, which a lot of towns and cities do. I mean, some other interested groups that are interested in preserving various histories or architectural things or Jewish things or whatever might do it. It could be a public-private partnership, and I'm not sure whether that could work.
I just can't see the town likely being the developer here and owning this property. I think the likelihood of saving it lies pretty much in private hands, which would kind of put the CPA out of the picture, I think.
Ah, okay. Just, I don't know how that works. So I was just,
Unless whoever bought it somehow had it open to the public as a museum or something.
Mhm.
So let me just say this again. I've never been the eternal optimist in the room, but I'm going to be here. I think these are ideas, and we're not going to have resolutions to whether they're good ideas or not good ideas here at this meeting. But I like all the ideas I'm hearing, and some of them are going to be viable, and some of them aren't. But we're just gathering information and ideas now, and I think it's a very fruitful discussion. So as much as Matt, I completely respect your opinion. You may be right. I'd like to find out, you know, by maybe Susan looking into it and seeing if what other examples of private public partnerships there have been and whether or not we could use any monies for that. Not that that's what that we'd want to use it for. I don't know. I don't know if the CBA wants to do that, but it's an idea. And I think it's one worth looking into. They're all worth looking into.
the main thing you need to know, Elise, if I may interrupt, I'm sorry again, because you can't see me, is the contract with Mount Auburn Hospital is up in October of 2021. And they are prepared to move to start constructing their new fields in November of 2021 to have them open by the spring. So I'm just saying, you've got 10 months to act, less than that really, when you think about it. That's their timeline. It is in the article that I just sent you, the presentation that they did at the town council meeting.
Okay.
The calendar is in there, their timing, their timeline is in there, just so you have that. And I didn't have everybody's address, so I forwarded it to you so you have the presentation that they did.
Thank you, Elodie. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And even though your hand doesn't go up, you light up yellow when you want to speak.
Okay, sorry, I can't see that.
Joyce, were you going to say something?
I did just say something, but I forget what, I just said that if a private person bought it and opened it somehow, yeah,
Museum or
that
something.
would work.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Suppose there's no space on the Mount Auburn Cemetery for it, huh? Yes, Joe.
A couple of things. I just wanted to say, and just Ms. Lucas, sort of second and expand on what you said. You know, these are ideas, and we should be, if we value this house, I think we need to be very careful not to talk ourselves out of preserving it. You know, we should try to not be too negative. I mean, realistic, but not too negative about any prospect until we know that it's pretty certain that, you know, that it's impossible. You know, secondly, I think that someone who purchases a property with a historic building on it has a certain responsibility. And I don't think that we should let BB&N, you know, the town of Watertown, I don't think should let BB&N out of that responsibility too easily. You know, they should be part of the solution because they're buying a historic property.
And so, Joan, I appreciate that sentiment and I agree with you. They're not here, but maybe we can start some discussions with them about that. And if Gideon's right and they're coming before the commission in January, that's kind of what we aim to do, even though it's not always successful, is to discuss with applicants how they can preserve historic assets of Watertown while still accomplishing their goals, even if it's not exactly what they intended. And I understand what everyone's saying. They're doing what they're doing, what they're doing, what they're doing. I understand that. But yeah, but I just want to say that going along a little bit with what Gideon said, they're not here, but a discussion with them would be great. I think it would be fruitful and it would help us at least with knowing where the boundaries are and where the push and the pull is as far as preserving. Susan, did you want to say something about the CPA? No?
No, not at this point.
I would like to say something.
Who's I?
Joyce.
Oh, Joyce. Hi, Joyce. You didn't light up yellow, Joyce. I didn't know you were speaking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like us to just sort of keep in mind Orchard House. That's on the Walker property, the high school there. You know, the Orchard House on Belmont Street, the old Abijah White House.
So, and I can appreciate that, Mariam, but we're really talking about the Schick house.
I know that, but what I'm saying is they wanted to get rid of that house on that property. And like Joe just said, they bought that property with that historic house on it, and they are stewards of that house. The fact that they bought it. And so we got that saved so far.
All right, so that's a vote for optimism.
Is the Schick House on the state registry? Macris site?
It is on the Macris site. It is not on the National Historic Register.
Thank you, Bob.
However, someone could, and Historic New England and I are talking about this, someone could have a piece of property and we could move the houses, and I think the house can be moved to that property, and then that person could sell the house with restrictions. And the restriction would be that it has to maintain it as an historic house. It then can go on the National Register, at which time grants and CPA funds could be made available. So
Correct.
There's just another option if we keep our minds open to it.
Correct.
Okay, anybody else have anything to say, good or bad, about the Schick house?
Question, Elise, that house in Belmont, was that a house that ever finally settled down, or was it taken apart? Because I've heard that it had to be taken apart because it couldn't find a home.
That's right, they couldn't find a home.
Okay,
So I think it sat down there for a while.
yeah.
I don't remember for how long, but they did look for someone to take it, and there were no takers. That was sad, but they did pay to move it from Common Street down. I believe they went down around that curve of death, you know, where the bridge is for Belmont. It's curve of death. And they went around there and up up Concord Ave. I think that's how they got it there. if I remember correctly. I was there. David, you were there. Weren't you there?
I was.
Yeah. I believe when I walked down there, David was being interviewed by the news. Am I wrong?
I was.
Look at that. The old girl still got it. Okay, so Schick House, anybody else? I think this has been a great discussion. I love all the ideas, even if some of them don't work. I love all the ideas. Okay, let's look at the agenda. And apologize, I have to get a second agenda up here. So the next one is the Common Street Cemetery and Old Burying Ground National Register nomination update. Who's taking that?
David, do you, Joyce is on there as well. I mean, do you want to take that, David? I just put it on there because I sent it to you.
I was interested in learning more. I was hoping there'd be more information about what was happening with it, and I realized that we got a letter back from Mass Historic about some concerns they had with the nominations. I was just sort of interested in understanding more of the status of it, or what the plan moving forward would be.
I can speak to that. I'm in contact with Eric Dre, who's the historic preservationist, who's getting them put on the register. And so the letter came in July. I got a copy also, and they wanted some updates done to it, some stuff moved around, some more detail on people who carved the stones. And anyways, Eric had another job, but he started working it again this fall, and he made the updates, and it has been resubmitted as of December 2nd, back to Mass Historical.
All right. Thank you for that.
That's great.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this is David. May we have a copy of the submittal? That sounds interesting. I'd love to see it.
Or I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you tomorrow morning, David. I'm in a lease too.
Joyce, can you send it to me, and then I can forward it to the commission just so they see what's been submitted?
Yep, sure, will do.
If that's appropriate.
Yep.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Joyce.
you guys are paying for it. The town's paying him, so yes, it's appropriate.
It's really important. For those who on this call who don't know, the old burial ground, the earliest recorded burial is 1642, and the presumption is that there were, plenty of burials before that. And Common Street Cemetery was where the legislative branch of Massachusetts government met during the early Revolution. It's where our meeting house was for a long time, and had some early burials too, although not quite as old as the Arlington Street Cemetery. So they're really two very important cemeteries. And so thank you, Joyce, for all of your work, and it'll be great to see how this goes.
Sure.
Thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
So I'm going to skip demolition delay ordinance for a second and go right to Community Preservation Committee update. Susan, do you have anything you want to share, or?
We are still working on the plan. Elodia, do you have, I'm not sure what your estimate is for the completion and approval of the plan?
Approval, I can't imagine that we would have a public hearing until probably the first quarter, hopefully February, but we are not meeting in in December. So our first meeting will be back in January, even though technically there's supposed to be a little bit of a hiatus for me in particular. I've been working every day pretty much with Lene, because we have the plan, we have the application and everything to put together. And it's been hard. So we're being very careful, trying to be we had a meeting with our designer yesterday for a chunk of it. So she is starting on this, but I don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver, but we're getting there. That's all I can tell you. We're getting there. And I hope people are coming up with ideas and being prepared to bring them forth.
Okay, thank you, Susan and Elodia. All right, and then I did skip over, and Gideon, I'm gonna ask some guidance on this because I always call it the wrong thing. But Susan, Matthew, and I spoke about the demolition delay ordinance.
The working group.
Working group. So I can use working group. I keep getting mixed up. Can I use working group or not? Or yes. So a working group to work on the demolition delay ordinance and improving it. And we came up, we had a really great discussion. I don't know if they both agree, but I think so. And I owe them notes. Sorry, my notes have not gotten to you because they got pushed to the back of the list. But if anybody, we're gonna have another working group session to just keep moving towards improving our demolition delay ordinance. So if anybody else wants to join in, let me know, to shoot me an email. And yeah.
Other commission members really can't, just FYI, you hit the, I think, maximum comfortable level of a working group.
Oh, what's
At
the,
3.
okay, that's the comfortable level. What's the legal level?
Well, what's a quorum?
4.
So 3 is a maximum level you can have.
Okay.
4 is a meeting.
So don't email me if you want to be part of the discussion. I will not answer it. I will delete it. It will go to the trash. Anyway.
So one thing I wanted to acknowledge, Larry Field is on this call, and if you wanted staff involved with the working group, Larry and I talked about that. He's muted right now, but so I don't know what, if that would be helpful to start looking at the document and track changes or other types of aspects of that. Just throwing it out there.
No, I think for right, Larry. Hi, Larry.
Hi,
You're unmuted.
I'm very happy to help.
All right, great. We'll let you know. I think we're gonna try to meet again, and then if we, it's not a very long ordinance, but certainly we know to go to you when we need some assistance. How's that? You're our go-to. So if you write me an email, I will respond to that one.
Yes, I'm happy to do that, and I do have drafting experience. I'm a lawyer by training.
Okay, I always thought we lawyers practiced for a long time, but okay. All right.
22 years.
Say it again.
I did for 22 years.
There you go. And we're still practicing, right? We're always practicing, just like doctors. Okay, any new business?
Elise, do you think we should discuss or bring people up to where we discussed in our group? In other words, I'm kind of wondering if this would be a good time to see if some of the general principles we were discussing resonate with the rest of the group, if we're going in a direction that's going to make sense for everyone.
Sure, if you want to do that, that's fine.
I think so, yeah.
All right.
I think, can I explain where I think we were coming from?
Sure.
I think for me, a lot of the reason I wanted to get involved in looking at the ordinance and discussing directions in which we might want to go and how we might change it was the general feeling I was having from my year or so on the commission, that almost 2 years now, that I was feeling some frustration with 2 general issues. And it seemed like when we talked about this, that there was a general feeling among the 3 of us that this was the case, and that perhaps this was the direction we wanted to go. And I thought it was important to see if this was, where everyone else thought we should go. And to get right to the point, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I felt and I feel, and perhaps we all feel, that a lot of the cases that come before us are uncontroversial and houses that do not really merit preservation kind of in a blanket way, in that they're not of an era or type that are really of worthy of preservation, yet they get caught up in the current 50-year look back period. And it seemed that one way or another, it might make sense to get these kind of houses off our agenda, whether it was changing the look back period or whether it was through some administrative change, such as we talked about, where a preservation officer makes those decisions so they don't come before us. On the other hand, it seemed to me that when we do think buildings are worthy of preservation and we vote for preserving, for demolition delay, it's become less and less effective. And essentially, it's not a deterrent. And the owners often aren't interested in working with us to find solutions that would preserve the building. And hence, I feel that there's just not enough deterrence when it comes to the few that we really do care about. And that's something we need to really look at, how we can have more strength in deterrence, because frankly, whether it's the Schick house or the house on Common Street or the other few houses that we have put delays on, none of them really, in my time on the committee, on the commission, have been preserved. They're willing to, the owners just will wait them out and demolish them. And it's I don't know what the legal limits of how far we can go are, but I think when, politically speaking, it makes sense to, if we're asking for more power on one end, we have to give up some on the other end, or we're going to look like we're just power hungry, historical, crazy people. And I think, it makes sense to approach the town saying, look, we don't want to be doing things and making extra work for people that really aren't within the purview of what we should be doing. And on the other hand, we want to have more ability to really stop demolitions where they really count. And I guess that's, in a nutshell, where I feel we should be focusing our efforts in the way we make changes, and that that should be the trade-off, and that those should be the general goals that we should be looking at. And how we get there, that's another question.
Thanks, Matthew. I think that was a great synopsis. Susan, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that was a perfect synopsis.
Yeah, I agree. Very well done, Matthew.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of passion in our working group. We had ideas firing right and left. It was a good discussion, but you can't be competitive, so don't ask. All right. Is there anything else? New business?
I just wanted to note that Marilyn Roach had dropped, and I don't know when she dropped, but she's coming back on now.
Okay.
So she may have missed a portion of that discussion.
Oh, no.
Matthew, can you repeat that, please? Marilyn didn't hear it.
No, my battery ran out, and then it was slow to start up again when I plugged it into the wall.
That's all right.
This is being recorded and is available on the Cable Access website.
Oh.
So all meetings since we've enacted this have been recorded that way and posted.
Marilyn, do you want me to repeat anything, or would other members be interested in commenting on the gist of what I was saying, in terms of, does that resonate, or does that seem not in keeping with your thoughts of how we should be approaching our town's preservation?
This is David. I certainly appreciate the voice you brought to that. I think on a very conceptual level, I agree with you that it would make sense to maybe refocus the demolition delay ordinance on those properties that are really truly the most important ones for us to see, and on the same page to then ask for more resources in terms of an extended demolition delay. I'm concerned that the town council would be very delighted to review such a proposal and certainly focus our attention and restrict our purview to certain houses, whether it be, instead of seeing all houses as we suggest, maybe it would just be a subset of them. They would be pleased to give us that authority. But then when it came to the demolition delay, to extend it to either 18 or 24 months, I suspect that probably wouldn't happen. So we would end up doing all of this work, and I wonder if we're just simply will end up restricting further our purview ultimately. So that's what I would want to avoid. But I certainly agree with you that that would be the ideal otherwise.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about, David, was, I want to say it was 3 years ago now, maybe 4, when we did the statistical analysis of how many delays we placed on properties. And that came before us. And there was very few in comparison to the number of properties that we reviewed. So for someone to say that this commission isn't very judicious, that would be just wrong factually. So I agree with you. I think, let's just leave it at, I agree with you, David. So I do think that we've got to approach it in the right manner, but hopefully if everybody has the same mindset that it's for the good of Watertown, we'll be able to find a middle ground. Because what we're proposing is for the good of Watertown. I think what Matthew was saying is, we don't need to have every single house 50 years come before the commission and have a hearing, 50 years or older. But there are some that are so worthy of preserving that there needs to be more teeth to the ordinance. And we're certainly wouldn't be the only town with 18 months or 24-month delay. But it's used so sparingly, I don't think it would affect many people at all, or many properties, I should say. But that's to be seen, I guess. Any other comments besides David? Joe, anything you want to say?
Just that I do feel that the first point could be a slippery slope. And so I do get a little nervous that giving up the opportunity to see things that maybe we would want to later on, we might have some regrets there. The second point is huge, right? I mean, I think we've seen this recently with owners just basically say, fine, I'll wait it out. And so we need to have more teeth. Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Joe. Susan?
Well, this is something that's been percolating in my mind. I mean, I agree with Matt and what Joe just said. I do think, and we might try to find a way of what happens when we're not talking about the buildings that aren't strictly historical and need preservation, is that we're not talking about the historical fabric of neighborhoods at all anymore. And so I'd love to find a way to bring that into a conversation for the community and not lose that aspect of what we talk about when we allow a demolition, but then also talk about how it will affect the neighborhood, the character of our neighborhoods. And maybe that's not the purview of the historical commission, but it is also potentially a loss to the community. So.
Okay, any other comments on that topic? Okay, any new business? You're either all frozen or you have nothing to say to me. All right.
Burned out.
Burned out, yeah, that's true. And we didn't even have an application tonight.
I know.
Okay, so do I hear, I thank you. First, I just want to say thank you all for coming. This was a great discussion. I appreciate everyone, each and every one of you, and your interest in Watertown and its history and its preservation. Without you, there'd be no Watertown. So does anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
David moves, we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Susan seconds. Matthew, in favor or against?
Favor?
Joe, favor or against?
Favor.
Marilyn, favor or against?
Favor.
And I'm in favor of it. All right, the motion passes. Thank you all again. Thank you, Gideon, for your help. And see you next month. Have a great holiday, everybody. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah tonight, right? All right.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.